I don't have enough money to get into real estate. How do I get into real estate on a budget? I get asked that a lot. One of the things that is really common is, and this is a misconception in real estate, is that you need to have a lot of money to be doing real estate, to invest in real estate. So the question is, how do I invest in real estate? How do I build up a portfolio perhaps, or buy many houses and start on that journey to get to that dream of financial freedom and passive income without having the funds that you would think you need to actually do that? Well, let's dive in. That's what this video is about. So when I started real estate, I actually had this exact problem. I read the book by Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Maybe you've read that book, maybe you have it handy, maybe you're actually holding it as as a Bible and it's right there next to you. But that book had a specific point in it which I found to be really compelling, and that actually sort of was the impetus, that was the catalyst, if you will, for me getting into real estate really heavy and figuring it out. That was that 70% of millionaires in the United States make their money in real estate. A lot of people don't realize that, but it's either they made it or they're actively making it in real estate. That's really all I needed to know, because I was at that stage where I realized I don't want to reinvent the wheel, and I'd just rather do something that I already know to work for a lot of other people. So that's how I got into real estate initially. Then very quickly I came to exactly probably the reason you're clicking on this video and watching it, to the realization that, well, hold on a second, I don't actually have money to invest in real estate, so how am I supposed to do this? That's where I started to try to figure out different ways of being able to acquire real estate without actually putting money in that I don't have, or my money in. And that is how I stumbled on something called creative financing. There's a lot of different facets to creative financing, a lot of different ways you could do it. There's a couple core ones, and then there's variations of those creative financing methods. But ultimately, what it really is about is that you can't approach everything as though you're a hammer and everything has to be a nail in order for you to be able to work on it. If that's your approach, you're gonna find that things are gonna be kind of difficult for you. When I say creative financing, what you might automatically be thinking about is wholesaling. So wholesaling is one that a lot of people are familiar with. We buy houses cheap, we buy ugly houses. Some of those companies maybe sound familiar. If somebody's in foreclosure, they'll probably start getting, or they're looking at bankruptcy, divorce, whatever, they'll start suddenly getting phone calls if the house goes into that kind of stage from all these people that are trying to really lowball those houses and pick them up cheap. That's kind of wholesaling. A lot of people are familiar with that, and that's not what I do. I don't advocate that, and I'm not a big fan of it, especially in the markets as they are now. But that illustrates my point of, if you only know wholesaling and you approach everything from that perspective, especially in market conditions as they are now, you're gonna find that you're gonna need to do a lot of calls and get a lot of no's and a lot of FUs and people hanging up on you, not wanting to do business with you because they've already heard that over and over. So you have to go through quite a bit. Another thing that I hear about quite a bit when you bring up the term creative financing is, well, creative financing means I have to go talk to hard money lenders or all sorts of shady people that are going to front me cash, or a loan shark. That's not what I'm talking about either. There's actually a lot of different ways that you can approach it, but it really starts from understanding this simple concept. What it really boils down to is you want to have tools. You want to have a toolbox that you can pop open once you figure out what market you want to focus on. So start off with figuring out your market. Once you have that figured out, that ties into your strategy. So your strategy will dictate what market will be best. There's a way, and we'll do that in subsequent videos, on how to find markets. Then once you know what market and what strategy you want to use, your entry strategy to get the deal, then there's multiple ways where you can get into that deal, either without any money, without any of your own money, or with very little of your own money. So that's kind of the whole thing. Now, when you have this toolbox approach and you know what these tools are, when to use them and how to use them, then you're able to take down a lot of deals. Big deals, residential, commercial, all of that becomes doable because you have those different tools for different jobs. So as an example, a wholesaler might go through 1,000 leads, and they only can work on those where they're getting basically roughly 55 cents on the dollar. That's maximum allowable offer, MAO, right? So usually it works out, after all is said and done, it's about 55 cents on the dollar. There's not going to be a lot of people that are going to say yes to that, even if you're pulling lists and calling those lists of people that would seem pretty desperate. And that's in part because you're not the only one, because they're in a bad position, they don't really want to talk to you, they might feel you're taking advantage, all this stuff, right? It's definitely a hard start. It's a very steep learning curve. So that would be how it would normally work if you were, for example, doing wholesaling. With creative financing, you have to understand the situation, you have to understand the problem and what kind of solution you can bring in. So it's a completely different mindset. Instead, you're actually trying to figure out how you can help the seller and give them a win-win, something that is a win for them and a win for you. So when I say creative financing, well, what is creative financing? So we go into this in more detail, and we'll do this in subsequent videos. If you guys have something specific that you want more information on, a specific topic or a specific way or a specific route, or any questions in general, leave a comment down below and make sure you also leave a like, and we'll make sure to cover that in subsequent videos. With that, you basically have three main ways that you're doing your creative financing. One would be where they have a mortgage in place. Now, it's a bit more nuanced than what I'm explaining, but it gives you a rough overview. So when they have a mortgage in place, but for example, it's no longer worthwhile for them to make those payments on that mortgage, they need to move, they need to get out of the house, but it's too expensive for them to sell, and it doesn't really make sense at this point because they don't have really much equity in that house, you can take over that mortgage and make those mortgage payments, and that would be known as subject to. You have another one, which is rent to own, which is kind of what it sounds like, where you're renting the house initially, and either you provide a tenant or you become the tenant, you have a master lease, so to speak, and you bring tenants in that rent to own position. They rent and then they buy after a certain amount of time. So that's also another way, and there's different variations of how you would do that, and we can talk about that in a subsequent video. Let me know if that's one that you want to talk about or you want me to cover. Another way would be seller financing. So these would be the big three in creative financing. So seller financing, that would be basically where, and you'd need the house to be free and clear to do it, where it's completely paid off, there's no mortgage. But with seller financing, effectively what you're doing is you are making payments and the seller becomes the bank. So there is no bank, the seller is the bank. And you make payments to the seller just like you would a bank with a mortgage. They hold the mortgage, right? So what happens if you stop making payments? Well, just like you would if you stopped making payments on a mortgage, then you would go into foreclosure with the bank, or the bank would take back the house. So that's kind of what a seller financing arrangement would look like. Basically, you're making payments to the seller and then you're paying off the house. So you don't need a high credit score. And in most of these situations, actually, they don't really care about your credit score if you have one, or if it's bad, or if you have a history that isn't good. That doesn't really matter as much with creative financing, which is another reason that it's amazing, because it's accessible to everybody. And if you have those tools, you can do them. So that's sort of an overview of generally what creative financing is. With that, I'll basically bring it to you this way. If you have these tools available and you understand how they work, how they are compelling to the seller, how you want to use them and how you want to use them maybe to exit your deals, you can actually make significant capital gains, and I'm talking about cash flow, and also you can build up your net worth without using a lot of your own capital, or in some cases any of your own capital. So that's what's awesome and what I found absolutely fascinating, and to this day I use it all the time. I absolutely love creative financing, and that's what one of the big topics is for this channel going forward. So anything you guys want to cover, let me know in the comments. And if you like these kinds of videos, you want to be alerted for new ones, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you get notifications. That'll help a lot with this channel. It means a lot to me and encourages me to do more of these videos. And if you guys leave comments, then I know what kind of videos you guys want to see. So I hope you enjoyed that. See you in the next one. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, check out the link that's in the description below. Click on it, it'll give you more information on how I actually do this kind of stuff to acquire not just single family homes, but actually commercial deals and even portfolios. And it'll give you more of an idea. And if it's something you really want to do, then I have a whole course that actually explains how to do this. I don't want to pitch you, but at the same time I am pitching you. Because if this is something you generally want, there's quite a bit that you need to know, and I'm not going to be able to cover it all in one YouTube video. So check out the course if this is something you're serious about. Now is a really good time to be doing this. Take a look, have a click.